So in Chris Bumstead's victory speech of him winning his 5th Classic Physique Olympia title, in his speech, he said that he tore his lat.
And I remember when I tore my lat in the gym, I called my fiance, called Hani, I called my parents, I talked to my sister Ian, and I cried. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And
about 10 weeks out of preparing for the Olympia contest, right? This is his 5th time winning the title. And I'm starting to see a pattern with every single time he steps on stage at the Olympia, because he only competes once a year. There's something going on with his physique. There's either an injury. That one year he tore his hamstring. He had a quad injury quite a couple years ago. The previous year being in 2022, he did have a minor bicep tear. There's one year where he had that autoimmune issue that flared up. Now this year he is reporting to have torn his lat. So I don't know if we would ever know anything if he didn't say it. And even though he said it, well, for me at the very least, I don't see any real difference in terms of his lats at all, to be honest. When I think of a torn lat, I go back to Ronnie Coleman, that version of himself he showed, and I think it was 2007 when he got on stage. And you can kind of see how his lats from the back were definitely not proportioned. And it's due to the injuries that he had in the back. I don't see any issues when it comes to how the muscle is supposed to look on Chris. And if you want to compare it to previous years, you are not going to see those issues, because I don't think it was a serious tear or a rupture or whatever happened. But you have to ask yourself the question, how long does Chris Bumstead has? Because it's, like I said, almost every single year he's going through some type of injury, some type of mishap with his training, with his preparation, with going into the contest. And at this point, he's won 5. Chris Bumstead, he makes quite a bit of money doing other things within the world of bodybuilding, right? His businesses, we know he's a part-time owner of Raw and Revive. We know he has one of the biggest, if not the biggest, fitness platform in all of bodybuilding, having about 24 million followers on Instagram alone. Not mentioning Twitter, not mentioning YouTube, not mentioning TikTok, one platform. There's a lot of stuff he has going for himself in terms of money and, being able to make a living. I don't think he needs a title. I don't think he needs the $50,000 prize money, which at this point in his career, I think that is just a drop in the bucket in terms of what he overall makes for the year. I think at this point it's just passion for him, right? Like, how long does Chris want to go? Because his body, although he's had quite a few injuries, it hasn't really suffered yet. You haven't really seen the wear and tear in his body, although he does report these things that happens to him, usually after the contest on stage or in a post after the show. How long he's going to go? He doesn't train as hard as he used to in terms of just the heavy poundages. He still trains very heavy, don't get it mistaken. He's still a very, very strong dude. Still squatting 5-6 plates on a hack squat. That's a lot of weight. Still going in there and getting it done. But at some point, you have to consider the fact of, like, if you're really gaining this amount of resistance from your body in terms of going into every single prep, when are you going to call it quits? Now, he did make a post a couple weeks ago when Ian Valliere first initially announced his retirement. He made a post and people thought that this was Chris now announcing his retirement, when in reality, he kind of referenced the fact of, that's when he first tore his lat, and he was just making a post. Obviously, we didn't know at the time, but around that event that happened. And we do understand that at this point now that he explained himself. But Chris honestly can win as many Olympias as he won. I mean, between him and Ramon Dino, even and Breon, I think Ramon is probably the closest guy that's going to contest Chris for the coming years. But Chris honestly can win as many as he won. I think Chris realistically has probably a guaranteed 3 more in the tank. 3 more wins in the tank. That's him just doing absolutely nothing but maintaining what he already has. He's that good to where he can just maintain this and just chill. And whenever the prep time comes around, just jump back on the sauce and get back into it. But it's all about how motivated is he. He does say he still loves bodybuilding. He loves the process. He's still very involved with just wanting to be a bodybuilder, right? And he even said this prep as well. This prep was very good for him in terms of just feeling like a bodybuilder. We know he loves it. But how long does that motivation last? How long are you going to maintain that when you have all these issues popping up almost every single prep? And the day might come where that really bad injury does happen, whether that is a massive pec tear, whether that's blowing out a rotator cuff, whether that's blowing out your knee, your meniscus, tearing something. And one of those big major injuries is going to be very difficult to come back from one of those. I think he knows this. I don't need to tell him anything. He's probably not going to watch this video anyways. But I think at this point, he's probably going to be very cautious in terms of training, because now that he's built all the muscle, it's not going to be that difficult for him to maintain at this point. It's all about doing movements that are more, I don't want to say lighter, but more cautious, controlling the weight a bit better. Maybe lightening the weight a bit, focusing more on just reps and quality reps, focusing more on just overall volume, which I know he does a lot of volume, but at this stage in his career where he's ready to reach his, I would say, max potential, unless he wants to push gear even more, which I don't think he does. He said in interviews specifically that there's a couple compounds he doesn't touch. Trend is one of them. So I don't think he actually has much interest to grow much more muscle, if I'm being honest. But I'm interested in seeing him in the open. I hope he does at least one open show. I hope the day comes where we at the very least see Chris do one Arnold, or he'll get a special invite to the Olympia. I know he's not on the size of like a Nick Walker, like a Sampson, like even Derek or Hadi, although those guys are a bit shorter than him. It would just be so cool to see that crossover. We don't really see those kind of crossovers in bodybuilding. We see a lot of 212 to open crossovers, but we don't see a lot of like classic to open crossovers, especially a classic men's physique Olympia champion. That would be an incredible crossover, and I hope we do see it one day. But question for you guys, how long do you think Chris has? Do you think he has a couple more years in the tank? I'm looking at about 3 in terms of just him being able to maintain this very same physique. And who knows, he might go to 8, he might go to 10. He might be the most winningest Olympia champion of all the categories of all time. He might create a gap so large that nobody will ever come close. And I think if there's anyone that could ever do that, it's Chris. Because although Ramon is quite good, quite muscular, and matches up to Chris quite well in terms of just everything, height, size, conditioning, Chris is still bigger. He's still genetically superior. He's still more conditioned. There's just stuff about Chris Bumstead, the way his symmetry looks, his waist to shoulder ratio, how his lats flare, the back development overall. Though he tore his lat, he does have a very good amount of back development there. I don't know if Ramon can come close to that, because Ramon's pretty close to his weight cap as well. Chris had an extra 2 pounds added onto his weight cap, and I think he could have actually been a bit sharper if he lost a bit more, probably water. I don't think he had any fat on his body, but water. If you look at the comparisons from last year to this year, he wasn't as conditioned, so he probably could have went down a little bit more, which means he could have had more muscle on his physique, because he had either less water or less fat, and he just could have probably come in a bit drier to make the weight with having a bit more muscle on his body. Realistically, he probably can gain another 2 to 4 pounds, honestly. But we'll see, guys. Are you interested in Chris, seeing him in the open? What do you think about him getting injured so often? And how long do you think Chris has? Let me know down below, guys. Quick video. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.